to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
To the republic.
Okay, oops. Roll call, please.
Chair Maggie Bird.
I'm here.
Adriana Vandergraaf has been excused. Matthew Johnston has also been excused. Shane Warburton,
Here.
Buzz Patterson,
Here.
James Flickinger, Gerald Abramson. John Corno has been excused. Steve Weiss has been excused, and Steve Tannehill. We have a quorum.
We do.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Okay. Maybe it's time for me to say this on the agenda review. We've had a request by the Wings Over Camarillo people, and they'd like to move up to the front. So I was going to put them under new business. Is that all right? That's what I meant. Yeah, to new business.
However you want to adjust it, that is fine.
Okay.
I do have one other item I do want to point out. We did an update for item B. That is the APL Airport Properties lease amendment. We did send out an update on that item as well.
Okay, thank you. Okay, approval of the June 8th minutes. Anybody care to make a motion? Disagree?
I'm sorry, I got to catch up. Which one are we looking at right now?
The June minutes.
Minutes.
We just need somebody to
Say
approve.
accept
this.
that, I'll sign it.
I'll make a motion.
I'll second it.
I'll make a motion to approve the June minutes.
I will second it.
Okay, we need a roll call vote on that.
Chair Maggie Bird,
Agreed.
Shane Warburton,
Yes.
Buzz Patterson,
Yes.
Gerald Abramson,
Yes.
and Steve Tannehill.
Yes.
All in favor? Or I'm sorry.
We already did that. Okay, public comment period. Airport-related comments will be limited to a maximum of 3 minutes per item. The public comment period is reserved for issues not on the agenda. In-person comments, if there's anyone here, need to fill out a speaker card and submit it to the secretary before the end of the public comment period. Speaker cards for issues listed on the agenda must be presented before the item is up for consideration. Speakers will be called when the item is presented. And Zoom public comments. Speakers should press the raise hand button if joining by telephone, press star, then 9 to be added to the speaker queue when the chair of the commission calls for public comment. And email or public comment or mail public comment. Public comments may be submitted in writing, and by email or mail, comments must be received by 12 p.m. on the day prior to the meeting. All written comments received prior to the meeting will be circulated to the commission members. Please note that all comments in writing are public record and not subject to disclosure. Comments will not be read aloud at the meeting, but will be made public upon the approval of the meeting minutes. Please do not submit personal contact information you do not want to make public. And do we have any speaker cards?
We have no speaker cards at this time.
Okay,
And Chair, we do not have anybody on YouTube or on Zoom who's indicated that they wish to speak on this item,
okay. Anybody by phone or any other means? So it's just us. Okay. All right. Under new business, I'm kind of changing the whole thing here a little bit so we can hear from the Wings Over Camarillo Air Show presentation. we'd like to hear about it, and then we'll get back to the regular agenda. Oh, okay.
Doing that, I'll introduce myself. My name is Bob Trimborn. I'm the Operations Director for the Wings Over Camarillo Air Show. We're going to be hosting the event August 19th and 20th here at the airport. It's become the second largest special event in the county. We draw from all across the region. So we're going to go through a brief PowerPoint presentation to kind of walk you through who we are and what we do. Bill Thomas here is our air boss. Ron Paul runs air operations. And John is the chairman of the Camarillo Wings Association. And I'm the air show director. So the CWA is like the policy group that basically sets policy for the event. The operations group, which I'm in charge of, we actually execute. So it's kind of like a city council operations group kind of. Sorry. So the green light is on. So let's launch into the. Is there a? Okay, next slide, please. So, Bill.
This is sort of the Mutt and Jeff. My mic is a different level in his. Anyway, the air show is a combination of a lot of different events, including obviously the airplanes, but also STEM, the CAF museum, the Veterans Hangar, and our classic air show parade. We also have a lot more of the vendors this year, because last year one of the complaints was
Bill Thomas is for their boss. So when we run the air show, the FAA gives up the event to we take total control of the airport during what's called a waiver hours. And Bill is the air boss. He's the guy who pretty much coordinates the entire air show activity during the event. He's the boss of it.
think of it like the orchestra conductor. So we'll do a little pantomime. Well, we had a couple of changes in order. We didn't change any of the view graphs, but we sort of nuanced it a little bit. So sorry, David, you see the 2023? Okay. Next.
Every year we do a theme for the air show. This year's theme is honoring the freedom of the 70th anniversary of the war conflict.
Oh, wow.
70 years ago this year. And so we're going to honor those veterans. In fact, we're going to have 3 more events for aircraft here on display and flying.
So I'll sort of hit this later on a slide. You'll see a picture, but our Grand Marshal this year is going to be Captain Royce Williams, who was a Navy retired captain, but in the Korean time frame, he was a young lieutenant, and he had a 1 versus 7 dogfight with some MiGs. He was in a Panther F9 straight wing against 7 MiG-15s. And it was right over the Yalu River in between China and Korea. At the time, the US government knew that those fighter pilots were Russians and not Koreans. And so when he shot down 4 of them, they decided not to try to, per our current thing with Ukraine. They didn't want to get in World War III. So they wouldn't acknowledge that the fighters were being flown by Russians. And so they held that secret until 10 years ago. So he just received a Navy Cross and he's actually in for a Congressional Medal of Honor, but he's 98, so I don't think they're going to make it in time. But he consented to be our Grand Marshal. He lives down in Escondido. And so we're going to fly him in on the Palm Springs C-47, pick him up in Palomar and bring him up here. So it's going to be a really neat event to have a Grand Marshal of his stature.
So let's have an air show. So here's an aerial picture of the event. It'll look different this year. We won't have the C-17. They just bailed out on us
No,
yesterday. Sorry. And so we'll probably replace it with a P309. But this is kind of an aerial shot at the beginning of the event. You can see the car show cars in place and the aircraft all in line, and a lot of vendors and exhibitors. In the upper part of the picture, just before it's a little air show, that's where the STEM pavilion is.
Yeah, the two open.
So we're a 501c3, so we're a nonprofit organization. We're supported by the Commemorative Air Force Wing here at the airport, the Experimental Aircraft Association here at the airport, the 99s, and the Department of Air Force. There are four major players that help put the air show on. Our mission is to promote youth in science and aviation, furthering the education of Ventura County youth through leadership and service. And one of the great things about our event, is we generate cash, and after we pay all of our bills, we get half of the proceeds that's left over after we squirrel some away for next year. And over the last 12 years, we've given $651,000. So it's more than just an action. We're supporting local nonprofits. Giving money back into that. So why energy? Of course, the first thing is to preserve the aviation tradition. A lot of children that go through school aren't taught anything about the history of aviation. They don't experience that at all, even though it's one of the most amazing technologies we've seen. They don't teach it in the schools. So here at the airport during the air show, one of our big goals is to impart the history of aviation not only to the children, but to the adults.
One of the big things that we do with our military part of it is to make sure that their recruiters have a good spot next to the airplanes that they provide for static. So it's a fairly significant recruiting tool, especially for the Air National Guard based in Channel Island.
So we draw again from across the region, all through LA County, up and down the coast. People come here from all over. Our marketing campaign is we're going more and more to social media, which has become a very, very successful model for us to use. We actually have email addresses from everybody that bought a ticket for the event, so we send out people to that group and word of mouth basically drives our attendance. Last year we had 10,000 people a day. We came within no parking here, we had no parking spots left each day. So we're a critical issue for us as a partner.
The buzzword on this slide is come early.
Yes. So we do a survey at the end of every show, and this shows you basically what people really like about the show. And jet activity, jet flying is up to the very top. One of the slides we didn't put up here is 80% of the people that responded said would come back this year. So we have a very loyal following. Big family event. So we talked about the.
We covered.
So here's a list of events. I know it's hard to read on the screen, but what you can see is there's a lot of activity. Gates open at 9 o'clock. So there's a lot of things happening around the air show grounds during that time. And at noon is going to be do the national anthem to open up the show. And it's one act after another throughout the day, including the car show parade.
My goal as air boss is not to have any dead air time. I don't know if anybody went to the Point Mugu Air Show, but it had like 7 acts for the whole day, starting at 10. It was had the jet teams on each end and some of our performers in the middle, but there was a lot of dead time. There's not going to be much dead time. You're going to have to get your sandwiches and tacos while planes are in the air. Okay, so the commemorative aspect of this, we're looking, our logo is the Korean War remembrance, and the statues in the Washington area for the Korean War veterans. Next. And this is the photo of Royce and a picture of the airplane that he flew in Korea. That's a F-9 Panther, which is probably the second generation Navy jets flying off carriers.
So the featured act this year is going to be the Super Hornet flight demonstration. We had the aircraft here in 2021, and it was the biggest of the show. The person that flew it during that time, Joey Kurtzy, he learned to fly here at this airport. And so it was 2000 at the time. And so he brought the airplane in and put it on display and flew it during the event. And so we didn't have it last year. So this year we're going to have the Flying Eagles come in from the war to do the flight demonstration. So the F-18 is a very dynamic airplane. It's fine. We have a very restricted airspace, so we can't do a lot of things that do other events, but here we have a very good facility for you after show.
Next. I'm going to run through these relatively quickly, but Vicky and John have both been here many times. They're absolutely top end performers. And you know that you have a good air show when the top folks keep their schedule clear and ask when your show is so they can make sure they don't double book. So next. We are going to have pyro. I talked a little bit about it at the end on what we're trying to do to cut down a little bit on the noise for the pyro. Jason in his MiG-17 is local. He's going to be flying with the Korean section, and I'll talk about in a minute. Judy Phelps is instructor of the year out of Santa Paula a couple years ago. She's now a examiner for pilots, which is a pretty high thing in the local FAA as far as she flies the check rides to qualify the pilots. And then Sammy Mason, also from one of the youngest air show performers. He's actually going to be flying both his pits and the Edge 540 during the show. The Dawn Patrol or RVs that are experimentals based on mostly Southern California. They fly a routine, sort of like the jet teams do, but obviously much slower and lower. Torrey Ward is checking out in the microjet. He's a local guy that's been flying here for a long time, and he's just acquired that and is getting certified to get signed off for air shows. The Hellcat, the T-34s, again, the Dawn Patrol next. So our fighters that we have come in from World War II, the Zero lives here, but the F4U Corsair is out of Plains of Fame in Chino. The P-51 is the Tuskegee Red Tail P-51 from Palm Springs, as well as the King Cobra that flew mostly in Russia. The US built lots of them, but then sent them to Russia to support the war. The local B-25 is a Marine Corps version called the PBJ. And then the Air Force A-26 was a Korean War light bomber is what the Air Force called it. D-Day doll is a version of the C-47 called C-53. It was designed for parachute operations. And this airplane actually dropped paratroopers in D-Day in Normandy. And it will be dropping both the Wings of Blue, which are the Air Force parachute team for the service flags. And then later on in the European section, they'll be dropping a stick of 8 round shoot static line jumpers as part of the reenactment for the European. DAG displays, sadly not the C-17, but we'll have some other interesting areas, including the Coast Guard will send their Dolphin over, as well as Army Guard with the 60 medevacs. So we'll have plenty of airplanes for people to smell, touch, and look through. Thanks. Experimentals. A lot of people don't understand when you say experimentals. It's not scary. Experimentals are an FAA designation for airplanes that were not built by Cessna, Piper, or Beach, or what I was thinking of the new plastic the Cirrus. They're built typically by hand, either partial kits or full kits, and all of these airplanes are FAA certified. They go through the same kind of rigor that the other ones do, but they obviously don't have to deal with liability issues that full manufacturer does. So the yellow one is Dave Timms, who was on this board for many, many years. And so we'll have quite a variety on display.
Car show is a major element of our event. We get 200 cars a day. And so we get everything from antiques up to modern exotic cars. And during the time when we're recovering the round shoot parachutes, we run the car show up and down the taxi. So big crowd.
We instituted that because one year the wind was a little squirrely and the parachutists that came out of D-Day Doll were scattered all over the field. So it took us about 30 minutes to collect them all. And I said, perfect time for a car show parade. So we've sort of incorporated that into our plan. Next. The STEM Pavilion has been a really high value incorporation into the air show. It's taken up pretty much the whole area of the CAF's commercial hangar. And we get folks from Society of Experimental Test Pilots that have a table there and talk to the kids. We have robotics from the local high schools, and one Ventura robotics team won a national award, and those guys will be there. And then the Mars.
The engineering replica of the Mars telescope was truly historic.
Flying on Mars.
Was there on display. When I first saw it, I was aviation graduate. One of a kind. We get really great experience. Really a hands-on event, and it grows every year.
So the veterans hangar is will be incorporated as part of the museum. They'll have a section back there, and they'll be happy to sit and talk with kids and their parents about where they came from. We only got a couple World War II folks left. Hopefully, we'll have some Korean War and then there's a bunch of my vintage from the Vietnam timeframe.
It is a family event. Children are welcome and they love it. Being here, way to get away from that little social media platform and into the real world. And it really is a fun time for them.
Yeah.
Sit there and talk about it.
The,
So 19th and 20th, tickets are only available. Credit cards, no cash. A great website. I'm gonna go through it, see more information, get to their website. 40 seconds.
okay, what I thought I would do is talk just a little bit about how we're trying to take care of between the F-18 and the pyro and our concern over the noise levels at the animal shelter. This, you can ignore pretty much everything except the yellow line that you see there is the high-speed line. The pyro is along both sides. And then the jump zone, these are primary and secondary jump zone. And then our aerobatic area is this thing in blue. And then the animal shelter is right here. So when we first started doing pyro, there was a lot of concern about the animal shelter and the effects on what it would be like for the animals. So we worked with the animal shelter and with our pyro guys. And first of all of their pyro is ground base detonated. There's no airborne. So there's the noise level for these has to go through these hangars before it gets to the animal shelter. And what I do with the animal shelter is I give them a 5 to 10 minute heads up call to the shelter saying, okay, pyro event's coming up in 10 minutes. They end up turning their music up and making sure that if they have any particular problem dogs, they got somebody with them. And as far, we have not had any problems with the animal shelter as far as back and us talking to them on the pyro. They said it's sort of like the worst one is like a door slamming. And so they're not unhappy at all with the pyro. In fact, 2 years ago, maybe had a clear the shelter weekend, the same weekend as the air show. And they had their typical is they adopt out 37 to 40 animals. That weekend, they had 165 adopted out. So we work well with the animal shelter and we are absolutely straightforward and honest with each other. Different problem. The F-18 with the Super Hornet is the loudest airplane that, except maybe the F-35 that's in the inventory. And there's really no way, I can't move the airplane far enough to the north to make it so it's not going to be noisy on the animal shelter. What we're going to do is give them the F-18 demo is about 15 minutes at the most. We'll try to make sure that instead of flying along this line, 500-foot line, and a lot closer to the animal shelter, we're going to fly them along the center of the runway, which moves them out another 1,000 feet. I'd be honest to tell you, that's going to help a lot. I just don't know. We're working with them. They understand it. They're not happy. They'd rather the F-18 not be here. But I would say that of the comments we got back last year, the primary complaint was, where was the F-18? So it was like 90% of the people that complained said, we thought there was going to be an F-18 flying. So it's really it's a hard thing to try to satisfy both the crowd and the animal shelter. The obvious answer is not have an animal shelter at the airport, but for us to
So the F-18 will not fly over there. The
So-
turns are going to be well.
So if you see the star here and the star here, all of that, none of the airplanes will fly inside the stars on this. So they'll be out and around. But it's,
We have your part to do that.
yeah, we really need to push the adults bringing their kids to make sure they have ear protection for this part. Okay, next. On the pyro, just this is a little techie, but the way you cut down the noise is you aim the end of the dynamite sticks. These are boxes of fuel, and you aim the dynamite stick at the animal shelter. That seems counterintuitive, but the blast goes 90 degrees from the stick. So the majority of the blast comes 90 degrees away from the shelter. So I got more complaints from Oxnard, Thousand Oaks than I did from the animal shelter. We're going to cut down, you saw that there was 2 sticks of dynamite on that box. We're going to go down to 1 stick to see if we can cut down the crack part of the boom. We think that will help, and we'll try it. If that still is too loud, we'll next time we will go with no.
Thank you very much. That concludes our presentation. Are there any questions?
Thank you so much. That was an incredible presentation. We appreciate it.
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. I'll start by saying it's funny that you brought up how Judy Phelps will be performing. She actually was my pilot examiner when I got my commercial license. So I've flown with her. She's awesome. Very cool that she's going to be coming. Just out of curiosity for the static display regarding the Korean War aircraft, do you know what aircraft are going to be coming for that?
The one specifically, and they're going to be flying. I have 3 groups of 4. One for European, one for Pacific, and one for Korea. The Korean one is going to be the F-86, the MiG-17. Between you and me, it'll probably not be exactly Korean War because the 15 was in Korea. But the 15 isn't very spectacular, and Jason flies a much better air show. The Corsair was in Korea, and the A-26 or the B-26, depending on what vintage you're at, all of those were flown in Korea. I don't think we don't have any of the antique helicopters that were Korean vintage that look like bananas. But the 47 certainly flew in Korea, and some the C-53.
Well, that is awesome. I mean, I've been coming to this air show every year for years now, and I don't think I've ever seen an A-26 there. So that's
No,
exciting.
I haven't. That's the first time we've asked for it. We gave up the P-38 for the A-26. If you want to know how.
That was my next question.
The
actually,
reason
what happened to that.
it's just a cost thing. They're 5,000 plus a piece.
I think it's a fair compromise.
Yeah, so.
Regarding having aircraft come in from the Navy, it's unfortunate about the C-17, but I know you're floating the idea of a P-3 Orion. Is there any consideration, or does the Navy have a policy about having their new sub-hunter, the P-8, come in? Would that be something you guys would look at?
Right now, they haven't offered themselves up but you asked a good question. I didn't ask them. And so it's inside 30 days, or it's right around 30 days. I can give a quick call and see if I can get a P8, but
Could be cool.
yeah, you're right. You're exactly right.
And lastly, and then I'll wrap up. Sorry, guys. Just want to show you some appreciation for all of the stuff that you guys do for nonprofits in terms of donations with the proceeds from this. That's awesome. And it is unfortunate about the animal shelter at the very least, but I mean, what can you do? It's an F-18. So, and they're at an airport.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Thank you guys.
I did want to, on a follow-up on the 501c3, all of them have mission statements and what their purpose is. It's important to note that the purpose for our Camarillo Wings Association 501c3 is to put on an air show. We don't do scholarships. We don't do our mission statement is to put on an air show. And so we're 40 maybe that work, volunteers that work around the year on the air show, and probably 400 that volunteers that work on the weekend of the air show, including all the nonprofits that we donate to.
Great. Well, thank you again very much. We
Thank you.
really appreciate it. I can't speak for everybody, but I sure learned a lot just now. So thank you. Looking forward to it. Okay. New business, right? Come on, take it away, Keith.
I'll leave it to you. The next item. I do want to, just to wrap up that issue, talk about working with the community in the air show to get the message out about noise, about animals, and us working with the Department of Animal Services. They do a lot of things during the air show. Talk about white noise, but they also bring the animals in. They adopt animals out for the day to get them out of the area.
Oh.
They use medications. They use all kinds of things to
Wonderful.
help the animals. Not only working with folks here to help minimize the overflights and things like that. So a lot of it done, not only with our community, but also with animal services. So.
That's great. Now I feel better about it. Thank you.
So moving on to your items, first item, Aviation Advisory Commission bylaw review. As was requested at the last meeting, and Dave has already brought up for us the highlighted areas. I won't go through all of them, but feel free to ask questions. The bylaws for the AAC were recently updated a few years ago. 6 pages in total, but I'll kind of just go through some of the ones that were highlighted. And Dave is bringing that up now. So, top item here, commission shall be subordinate to, directly accountable to the Ventura County Board of Supervisors. Each supervisor, there's 5 of them in the county, have 2 candidates that they appoint to the AAC. And the terms of those folks tie with those candidates. Some members have been on the AAC because other Board of Supervisors have decided to keep those same candidates on. So you'll have some members that have been on for a few years. Basically, members are expected to possess knowledge of aviation matters and have some experience in administrative proceedings. And then there's a whole laundry list of training. You have ethics training that you're supposed to complete within the first year on the AAC. And then, Political Reform Act 1974 having to do disclosure of campaign contributions and expenses. Title II Code of Regulations has with California duty of filing for officers, members on a commission, things like that. Government Code Section 1090, conflict of working on government contracts that might have a financial interest for you. And then I would suggest that all of you look at the Fair Political Practices Commission. Helps a lot with giving some guidance on conflict of interest in your role. So next page, unless somebody had any questions on that specifically. I highlighted the top important one, no compensation. Thank you very much for your service. Term of office, nothing to add there. Then it's the purpose. And there's a few items in this area that I thought were kind of important. The commission shall advise the board on matters pertaining to county-owned airports and on matters of promotion and advancement of the orderly development of air transportation in the county. Then it says the commission shall advise the director of airports and the Department of Airports or designee on technical, operational, financial, and policy matters pertaining to the airports. The commission from time to time may seek and receive information from airport users, lessees, the general public and agencies of the federal, state, and local government on county airport operational and administrative matters and on aeronautical concerns in general for the purpose of formulating recommendations to the board. In summary, for me, that means pretty much everything that we do at the airports at some level could fall in. That's what you see on our agendas pretty much, is what's going on at the airport at the time. No questions on that section? Sure.
On section 5, if you put that back up, thank you for that, Keith. So one thing that I would mention, there was a presentation done a couple years ago by our neighborhood group, and there was some discussion about that presentation. And the way I read paragraph 3 here is that one of the things we should be doing is seeking input from, as it says, hangar owners, pilots, the general public, agencies, et cetera. So it's an appropriate thing, I think, for us to have presentations from all of the bodies that are mentioned there from time to time as we might decide we want them.
I don't know that it says you should, it says you may, but yes.
Agree. Sorry, if I said should, I said we may. Yeah.
Is that an opportunity to do that? I would say yes, that is in the purview of the commission.
Then the fourth one, I just want to call that out again, is that, because again, I think it's come up. It struck me anyway as a commissioner that our first duty is to the people of Ventura County. And if, as I understand us as relative to the authority, we uniquely have this call out in our bylaws to represent the public. That's kind of our core. I mean, obviously users of airport, anybody directly concerned, but it specifically calls out the public. So I just want to highlight that. And then I'll say one more thing, Keith, and then you might have a comment back. And then the final one is that when we look at things, we're supposed to look at not only, the impact on that's in front of us, but the environment and economic impacts. But the environmental one is called out as well. And I know we've had topics on lead, we've had topics on PFAS, and I just take my direction from that line to say that's entirely within our purview to look at the environmental impact of our activities at the airport.
I think I'll get to that item specifically.
Mhm.
But what you said is I wouldn't disagree that this committee, quite frankly, along with our board of supervisors and airport authority, they're here for their constituents. So I think that's consistent across the board with all of those entities. With that said, unless any other questions, I'll move to the next item. Page 3, relationship, a key item, which was kind of touched on, relationship to Camarillo and Oxnard Airport authorities. The commission, AAC, is not subordinate or accountable to the authorities. I've heard members of the public talk that, hey, timing of your meetings, that AAC's got to go first because they've got to report to. It is, you are separate and distinct. That's pretty much clear in my mind in this statement. And then moving down on matters not requiring board action or approval, the airport's director may request commission to review and make recommendation to the board, airport staff, or both on matters under the commission's jurisdiction, and then not including, and here's a whole laundry list again, all the things: noise, environmental, airspace, land use, policy, rules, regulations, initiatives, special events. Laundry list is all there, which is why, again, the agendas you see are pretty complex and pretty broad. We'll move to, how about page 4, next page, unless there's any questions on that. The officers, again, you have a chair and vice chair, first meeting in January. So I'll start that following the Robert's Rules of Order. The airport director, and luckily very talented staff, secretary to pull all these things together. So then you kind of run through the various, following the Brown Act, and we've got frequencies of meetings once a month. Typically, we typically don't meet in August and December because our board of supervisors don't meet, so no action's really happening. And or if there isn't, agenda items to be had. There might be a cancellation. Moving, how about page 5? Quorum is 5 commission members. Public participation, as mentioned, the reason we're all here is to garner public participation on the various items that come before the airport and up to the authority and then board of supervisors. Voting, this has come up before. Normally it would be a voice vote followed by roll call on each of the items. Then commission shall be governed by the latest revised Robert's Rules of Order. Special meetings may be called by the chair or by regular motion at any time during an open session, if approved by the majority of the quorum. And the last page, page 6, is just the bylaws may be amended by the board of supervisors. So if this commission felt there might be some need for some changes, ultimately it's the board of supervisors that would decide. As signed most recently by Supervisor Long. A few years ago. 2020. So any specific questions or thoughts? I want to just kind of run through. They're pretty straightforward and available online if somebody has to go back or would like to reference them, but happy to answer any questions you might have. Other than that, we will answer questions or move on to the next item.
I don't see any questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Chair, we do have one person who's indicated they'd like to speak, and it may have been on the air show. So I apologize if I was unable to spot that in time, but I'd like to promote that person and verify which item they wish to speak about. Was that okay?
Of course. Thank you.
It's Ben D. Benedetto, and when he gets online, we'll get him rolling here.
Thank you, Mr. Naffy. It's actually on the bylaws is my comment.
Very good. Go ahead. I'll give you 3 minutes.
Okay, great. There are two sections of the bylaws that I just wanted to speak about briefly. Article 2 and Article 5. Article 5 is what Commissioner Tannehill was just relating to. And my point would be that over the years, as far as I know, the advisory committee has not really dealt with city and local government, being community government, neighborhood councils, things of that nature. And I want to encourage that because the city of Oxnard has the last say on development approval. And many times things get approved that people really don't have an opportunity to have the kind of input that is necessary. Portofino is a good example of that. That's a new development along 5th Street, which is right up against the safety zone. It's 900 feet from the center of the runway. And the zoning was changed from airport related business to high density. And in a meeting recently with the developers, they said, oh yeah, we have great acceptance. Everybody wants this. I asked the question, did you talk to the neighborhood councils? They said no. City hadn't talked to neighborhood councils either. So I would encourage the commission to use the powers that they have. And then on Article 2, which has to do with membership, it's a little less pleasant business here. Public records show that Chair Maggie Bird purchased a property in Oxnard Shores on May of 2022. The records show a recorded reverse mortgage lien against that property. Reverse mortgages require that the lien holder warrant that the subject property is her primary residence. If her primary residence is in Oxnard Shores, that is not her district, and it's a clear violation of Article 2. Supervisor Lafleur appointed Ms. Bird, and over the last 12, 13 months, emails and phone calls to his office to address this situation have gone unanswered. This is a clear violation if it's the primary residence, according to the documents. And again, they're public records. So this has to be addressed. Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Di Benedetto. Any others?
Chair, no, nobody else has indicated they wish to speak on this item.
Do we need a roll call for this agenda matter?
Yes, we would take a motion on the item.
Okay, on the bylaws? Yes. Yes. Okay. So if anybody want to move that we receive and file.
I will move that we receive and file this presentation on the bylaws.
Thank you. A second. Okay, thank you. Okay, roll call on that?
That was Steve Tannehill, you second?
No,
No, Gerald Abramson?
No, Buzz Patterson.
Buzz Patterson,
Yeah.
sorry, I can't see you.
I might remind everybody, say your name before you speak into.
I'll just take a roll call. Chair Maggie Bird,
Yes,
Shane Warburton,
Yes.
Buzz Patterson,
Yes.
Gerald Abramson,
Yes.
and Steve Tannehill.
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously.
next subject, approval of and authorization for the Director of Airports or his designee to sign the third amendment to lease with Airport Properties Limited LLC for development of a hangar complex at the Camarillo Airport. And let's see. Staff requests that your commission recommend that the Board of Supervisors approve and authorize the Director of Airports or his designee to sign the attached third amendment and to lease to Airport Properties LLC and development of a large complex at the Camarillo Airport as shown in Exhibit 1.
Good afternoon. I'm Madeline Hurley. I'm the lease manager for the Department of Airports. I want to welcome Mr. Patterson to the Advisory Commission. This rather meaty attachment is the result of quite a bit of work on both the tenant as well as the landlord's part of the Department of Airports to resolve some longstanding issues and more recent issues that have arisen about boundaries of the lease premises and the exercise of options for further expansion of the lease premises. Can I have the exhibit, please? The yellow is the original, what's called the initial premises, and you see those hangars on the northeast corner of the airport there. The alert hangars are here, and this is Las Posas over here. So just to kind of orient you. These hangars, the brown, the blue, and the green, have additionally been built over the years. And these hangars here are proposed for further options to be exercised in the future. This amendment puts some boundaries around the timeline within which those can be exercised and built, 7 years, and determines the square footages for each of these hangar premises to resolve some longstanding disputes about size and allocations and rents and whatnot. If you've had a chance to go through the amendment, you may have questions, but it's the result of quite a bit of negotiation to kind of finalize and allow both parties to move forward for future development. One of the interesting items is for the new option areas for the ability for some commercial hangars to be built, which is something that both the Oxnard Airport and the Camarillo Airport are in dire need of for additional aviation services. So we're looking forward to that. Are there any questions?
When you're talking about the commercial hangars, what, is there a time line on it or?
Well, the overall timing is 7 years to exercise additional options. So that would happen within that timeline if it
It'll
was
be
going to be
leased to
built.
somebody to build a hangar.
So this whole property is part of an agreement, an existing agreement. These option properties are areas that are exercised when the tenant wants to go ahead and further his development, but right now it belongs to a single tenant, which is Airport Properties Limited right here. And this is the existing area that's now vacant. So you have Cloud 9 over here. It's the existing area that's vacant behind the fire station that is yet to be developed. So this governs development going forward and sets some square footage boundaries around those that have already been built.
Yeah, I talked to you before about having some commercial hangars
Mhm.
that really don't have any place anymore.
So hopefully that will come to
Hopefully
pass.
that comes
Yeah.
about. Thank you.
When you say commercial hangar, what would take place within that hangar?
Those could be any kind of aviation services, so mechanics, ops,
Those kind
flight, schools, any of those.
all aviation specific.
Correct.
Okay, if there's no more questions, we have.
What was the biggest thing about the hangars? They were already leased, approximately, I assume. But the size of them or something, was that a problem or?
Well, so as each option was exercised, there's a parameters around which, upon which they have to pay rent. So it was a matter of where was that boundary and where was that border? And over the years, it's been since 2001. There's been some dispute over where those boundaries exist. So
Thank you.
So I have a motion to approve.
Before I take a roll call, do we want to see if there's any public comment?
I'll go ahead and make a motion to approve.
Thank you. Thank you for the reminder. No, no public comment at this point.
Can I get a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second that motion.
And roll call.
Roll call.
Chair Maggie Burke,
Yes.
Shane Warburton,
Yes.
Buzz Patterson,
Yes.
Gerald Abramson,
Yes.
and Steve Tannehill.
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously.
Okay, the next subject, authorization for the Director of Airports or his designee to award annual consulting service contracts for fiscal year 23-24, sorry, to Kaufman Associates, Inc., Aviation of Wolford Company, Mead and Hunt, Inc., and the Adams Companies LLC, and to issue work orders against these contracts.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Chair Bird, Commission members. Each fiscal year, the department looks to enter into annual service contracts with professional consulting firms to support operations and projects at Camarillo and Oxnard airports. Once an annual contract is in place, work orders are issued against the annual contract for specific tasks. The type of services that these typically include are, and it's not limited to this, but our examples are engineering and plan review, specification writing, construction estimation, construction management, and oversight, planning and environmental reviews. This action to approve these annual contracts does not result in an immediate fiscal impact. It's only when the airport issues a task order against the contract that we incur the cost. And I would just add that the adopted 23-24 budget has sufficient revenue and appropriations for these type of contracts before you. And with that, I would ask for any questions.
Thank you. Any questions?
This is a recurring annual thing we do under the 5-year contract, correct?
Yes, I mean, it doesn't need to be limited, but that is when we do the 5-year solicitation, it checks all the county procurement processes. So they tend to be the firms that we repeat. But we also have the ability in the future to add additional firms if we need different types of services. But we would need to make sure we meet the county procurement process. And in this case too, we met the federal procurement process. So if they do tasks that are eligible for reimbursement under any of the grants, we meet those requirements.
Thank you. Any other questions?
I'll make a motion to approve item 6C.
Before I take the roll, just want to see if we have any public comment.
Thank you again for the reminder. We do not have anybody who wishes to speak on this item.
I have Steve Tannehill as making that motion. Can I get a second?
Buzz Patterson,
I'll second it.
That was Buzz or Gerald?
I'll second it.
Yeah, let him go.
Okay.
He's new.
That's why you have to say your name first.
Yeah.
And the roll call, Chair Maggie Bird,
Yes.
Shane Warburton,
Yes.
Buzz Patterson,
Yes.
Gerald Abramson,
Yeah.
and Steve Tannehill.
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay.
All right, this is an item we've talked about several times over the last year or so. It started with a discussion having to do with the aircraft rescue and firefighting vehicles and our annual capital improvement project where we had a replacement our aircraft rescue and firefighting vehicle on our ASIP in a neighborhood of $800,000, $900,000 for a new piece of equipment. This goes back to Oxnard still maintains its commercial certificate, airport certificate, part 139. And, we haven't had airline service in about 12 plus years, but there is that opportunity that it might come back. May it not? Yes, but we still are working towards that. We, on a regular basis, do talk with new airlines, see if they'll come back. And then there's new technologies that might mean those services need to be there. So we maintain that certificate. Therefore, FAA requires that we do certain things, we train our staff in a certain way, and we have aircraft rescue and firefighting vehicles. So the vehicles that we have, we read the report. Our newest one is 18 years old, and our oldest one is more than 36 years old. In our, not last year, but the year before, we were doing our emergency response. So the FAA comes out and does tests, looks at our records, does other things because we're certificated. When our operations folks responded, did the response, made the time, there's a certain time and distance and drill. The FAA inspector opened up the door to congratulate our staff and outpoured out of the cab a ton of water because the top turret had failed into the cab, shorted out some of the radios. Needless to say, our equipment is old. So as we talked about on our ASIP is a future, and we just pushed that out farther because we weren't sure, again, are we going to maintain the certificate? What are we going to do? Not only that, it takes some time to lock up a grant. And then when you order this new ARF equipment, it can take 1.5 to 2 years to build it. So at a minimum, we're talking 3-4 years out anyway. So in the interim, I've been doing this for a while. I called some of our friends and sister and brother agencies around the state and asked if they had any newer surplus equipment. And sure enough, Burbank had a 2004 Stryker, 1 year older than ours, but it's made by Oshkosh in much better condition than ours is. And then what you see in here is SFO. Wasn't willing to give it to us, donate it to us, but they're willing to sell it to us for $14,000. Still a very good price. Because again, a new one is in the neighborhood of $800,000, $900,000. A refurbished one, where somebody gets one of these surplus ones and refurbishes them and then sells them to somebody like us, those are in the neighborhood of $400,000, $500,000. So a free one and a one for $14,000. Good deal for us. There's some upgrades. You see that, we have to do another $30,000 to upgrade some things, new radios and things like that. But all in, a good deal that maintains our certificate and gets us through the next, we could get 7 to 10 years probably out of these two pieces of equipment as a primary and as a backup for us. So that's what we're looking to do. We'll ultimately take this to the board to get approval. We're looking for your thoughts, your input, and your support with this plan.
Is this also Burbank? Because I noticed it's San Francisco, right? It's
So we're looking for two because our vehicles are so old, the primary and the secondary are so old. We're ultimately going to surplus both of those out is the plan. And we would take the donated one for Burbank, that would be our primary because it's in better condition. And then take the SFO one we purchase, and that would be our secondary. Both of them are in better condition than both of the ones we have.
You say this one here to San Francisco, maybe 10 years, somewhere there, operational.
Oh, no, both of them are closer to 20 years. Again, close to the age that we have, but they're in pristine condition. Again, how SFO and Burbank, because of the dollars they have, they maintain these in pristine condition, both of them.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was my question, you know, me, why, how can that be in better condition at the same age? And it's because they're able to spend more money on the maintenance and, okay.
And those bigger airports have, I'll just give you an example for San Francisco.
Mhm.
San Francisco has 3 fire stations on the airport.
Okay, yep, right.
When they responded to that Aviation accident several years ago,
Mhm.
they had 15 of these pieces of equipment that responded.
Mhm.
I mean,
It's a big
that's the
difference.
volume in which they're dealing with, as opposed to us that might have a primary and a secondary, just 2. You know, they've got 15 or 20 pieces of equipment, multiple fire stations, things like that.
Right. Well, my opinion is that that was a great job you did, Keith. Thank you for getting those. And I'd never heard of that happening here before, but that was great. Thank you.
I too would commend Keith and staff for this. Some questions, I guess I didn't realize right now we need to have 2 ARF trucks, a primary and a secondary. That's the requirement for Part 139.
To maintain your, because otherwise you have no piece of equipment. And when we lost when the turret failed, it was out of service for 3 months.
Mhm.
So you know, if you have certificate, it's got to be operational immediately. If you can't have any piece of equipment, you're suspended. So you got to have it.
So it's not a lot of money in the scheme of things, but you know, we've talked about this before and I think it's appropriate to talk again. We have these strictly because we have the Part 139, correct? And these trucks both have the PFAS firefighting foam, correct?
They do, although the FAA, 2 things. One is that no longer is tested out in the environment. It stays within the truck, new system, closed circuit testing system. So no new is coming out. And the FAA is working on a replacement due out. Military's using it right now. It's all protein, due out in October.
Okay.
The PFAS issue, 1, it's not in the environment anymore at the airport. And 2, there is a replacement that is expected this year.
So when the replacement foam comes, these trucks will be able to use it? The non-PFAS
Yes,
foam?
that is specifically the
Okay.
goal. Again, it's it's mandated. The AFFF, aqueous filled forming foam, AFFF, that has the PFAS in it, and it will be shut down and the new system coming online for across the country.
So we've talked about our Part 139 before, and as you point out, it's been a dozen years plus or minus since we've had airport passenger traffic. I always want to go on record saying I would welcome airport passenger traffic. I think that would be a great thing for Oxnard to provide value to the community. But you know, my background, is business. I was a business professor at CSUN. We used to do case studies, so this would be a perfect case study. And so it just begs the question, at what point, right now our Part 139 is inactive, correct?
Correct.
So we couldn't just start up tomorrow anyway. We'd have to notify the FAA and go through a process of getting our Part 139 reactivated.
No, it's inactive, but we immediately could. We just had our annual inspection. So the FAA inspects us as
Right.
if it is.
And they're still
active.
inspecting us annually? Okay.
Yes.
Don't the inactive require a 90-day notice to the FAA?
Yeah, again, there's a heads up and things like that.
So
But
it's
yeah.
not years, but it's not weeks either. It would take us several months
to be worked out, and typically operations of somebody coming on board,
Okay.
an airline isn't going to start tomorrow.
Okay.
Right. But yes, the 90 days is a reason.
I would just ask again, and it sounds like the PFAS thing is getting resolved, but as some of the new members may not know yet, we've spent, what, $350,000 on identifying PFAS pollution at the airport? And it's got to be remediated. So there's going to be another bill come due to remediate it. That may be paid for by the federal tax dollars, not local tax dollars, but still in all. The EPA just did a finding on PFAS, restricting it even further, and 3M, the manufacturer, just settled a $10 billion lawsuit to pay for PFAS remediation. So it's not an insignificant problem. And I guess, and I don't want to just focus on PFAS. It's like we're putting time, energy, resources in maintaining a certificate that we've had many experts in the field tell us, that unfortunately, given our situation, we're not going to get passenger air service back. And that's from all the conversations I've had over the last 2 years. That seems to be the case, that it's not coming back to Oxnard. Now it could, but if you were doing a business case, the odds of that, the probability, it would tend to argue, let it go. If and when at some future date, should passenger service want to use Oxnard, we've done it before, we could do it again. I want to hold it up over $45,000, but I just think we need to have that conversation. And I guess I would ask you, when will we have that conversation? I mean, if these trucks fail and we have to spend $1 million for an ARF truck, is that the point where we say, you know what, it's not worth it anymore? Or when do we?
Yeah, I mean, I'm
What's
not
our
going to give you
decision
a
process?
specific timeline idea, but I'd say in the next 3 to 5 years, we'll make that decision, which falls in line with when we would expect to go to the FAA for a replacement ARF truck. I can tell you anecdotally that in Contra Costa County, we didn't have airline service for more than 20 years. JSX startup regional came to us because we had maintained our Part 139, and we could very quickly do that. Steve, you and I had this conversation. If we were to surrender our certificate, the restart up, typically what I've seen in industry is at least a year. And that's a hurdle for somebody, the airlines, when they want to start, like everything else, they want to do it right now. Maybe tell them now, well, we got to get our certificate. That's going to be a year down the road. Those are just hurdles. And I can't tell you for sure whether we're going to have airline service. All I can tell you is we continue to try to bring that in. It is a desire of the community as a whole. The community would generally like to see that. Is that going to be vertical takeoff and landing? Is that going to be electric airplanes? Back to the old regional?
I see that too. That's
Right.
my view of the thing. You can't see the future. I don't know. I don't have that crystal ball.
No.
And new airplanes are going to be out, and you never know what type of aircraft can be used to come in there. And as you said, electric, and
So in my mind, when you ask about the timing, I think 3 to 5 years paints a picture. Let's watch that technology in 3 to 5 years. And then at that point, before we ask maybe for a new ARF truck, then we kind of make that decision at that point.
you should leave it open.
Yeah, no,
It's not time to do that.
and I don't disagree at all. Were it cost neutral or cost minimal? I first raised the question where we had $1 million to buy a fire truck. That's when I really said, hey, wait a second, $45,000? Yeah.
When it comes to that point, then they
Right,
deal with it at that time.
right. And you never know, Jerry. I totally agree.
Yeah, you never know what's going to come up.
You just have to make your best decision, and where do we deploy our resources? And for $45,000 and having an annual training, which is probably good to have anyway, probably doesn't hurt to have. Yeah, why not?
Go for it.
Okay, any other comments? Questions? Thank you very much, Keith. Need to have a motion to approve this.
I'd like to make the motion. to
I'm
approve
sorry,
this.
Before we do the motion, we'll just check for any public comments.
We do not have anybody on Zoom wishing to speak on this item.
Okay. And the motion, Gerald
I'd like to
Averson?
make,
Okay.
I'd like to make the motion that we
And second?
buy the vehicle.
Mhm.
container vehicles from Burbank and San Francisco.
I will second.
Thank you. And the roll call, Chair Maggie Bird,
Yes.
Shane Warburton,
Yes.
Buzz Patterson,
Yes.
Gerald Abramson,
Yes.
and Steve Tannehill.
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, the airport layout plan update for Camarillo Airport.
Hello again. I have several updates actually today
Oh,
for
good.
you. I'm going to start with this one, and I'm going to keep them pretty brief. And if you end up having any questions, you can let me know. So we are just updating you on the Camarillo Airport layout plan update outreach sort of to now. And that's just a overview so that you and the public have a picture of the type of outreach that we've been doing to our community in order to bring attention to this update that we are doing here at the airport. So I'm just going to run through, we are, we want to get the word out. And so we have tried to find as many platforms as is reasonable and makes sense to try to get the community involved, or at least to understand that this update is happening and that what the methods are for participation. And so leading up to the meetings, we advertise in county-wide publications, trying to reach from the east to the west on all sides, including we did do a Spanish weekly publication called Vita that we also put our notices in, trying to make sure that we're reaching as many communities as we could. We post on our social media accounts, both the airport social media and the county's, the county-wide official social media sites, which has, I believe, about 1 million followers. We also post information and links on our website, our airport websites, and also the study-specific websites have all the information in English and Spanish. We also do supplemental email blasts out to the public, and the different community groups, including airport tenants. We have a community interest list, and since this study is focused around the Camarillo Airport, we also send these email blasts to the city PIO, who also has their own community list and often publishes information on their website. We also hold public meetings, study specific, but also our point in even sharing this information about our outreach is that we want to keep this topic on the forefront of people's minds, that we are still doing the study, that even when you're not hearing from us, it's going on, and perhaps you can see a little bit about, get updates about what we're up to. That's why, for our airport advisory and commission meetings, commission and authority meetings, that we try to do these updates. And then also behind the scenes too, we have a lot of direct communications where we have questions from members of the public who contact sometimes staff directly or our project team. We take phone calls, and in some cases staff meets with groups that have some specific questions. So that's all going on as as the study is moving forward. And then just a quick preview of what's coming up is, you may recall from our last update, which we did in May, we actually submitted our FAA forecasts to them for approval. And we have since received approval of the FAA forecasts. And this is important because that information is critical to being able to develop the next chapters. So right now we are in the process of chapter development so that we'll have additional materials to put out on the study websites And so that we can start identifying when our next meeting date will be. And right now, based on the time needed for some of the chapter development, translation review, things like that, we believe that's going to be November. As we get through this summer and we make some progress on the chapters, we'll solidify what that date is, and then we'll go back through the process of advertising, posting the next meeting date through as many methods as we can. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions or take any comments.
No? Well, thank you very much. Go on to the, oh, wait. Do we need to vote on this one?
We'll take any public comments.
Nobody on Zoom wishes to speak on this topic.
Keep in mind.
And would someone like to motion that?
I will motion to receive and file this presentation on the layout plan.
I'll second.
Thank you. Roll call. Chair Maggie Bird,
Yes.
Shane Warburton,
Yes.
Buzz Patterson,
Yes.
Gerald Abramson,
Yes.
and Steve Tannehill.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion passes unanimously.
Okay. um, Did we do F? Yeah. Okay. Sorry.
I didn't fully sit down because I am the next item as well.
Okay, you want me to read it or you? want me-
I'm happy to read it for you. It's lengthy. So, so item 6F is staff is requesting your authority or recommend the Board of Supervisors grant authorization for the Director of Airports or designee to accept and sign Federal Aviation Administration grant number 43 when offered in an estimated amount of $19 million, which will provide funds for the taxiway Foxtrot reconstruction at Oxnard Airport. Authorization for the Director of Airports or designee to apply for, accept, and sign for a matching grant from Caltrans if offered, and authorization for County Council to execute the certificate of sponsor's attorney required by the FAA grant agreement. So this item here is before you at this point in time in anticipation of the FAA's deadline for grant award. The board, additionally, the board's meeting schedule and the construction schedule have us bringing this to you before we actually know if we're going to be offered the grant. And we are requesting that the DOA, the Department of Airports, be authorized to be able to accept the FAA and Caltrans grants when offered, and at this point in an approximate amount for the taxiway Foxtrot reconstruction project. The grant estimate is based upon the projected eligible total project costs and may be adjusted higher or lower to reflect based on bid, construction costs, and available FAA funding. In this case in particular, we've actually opened bids for the project. We did that on June 27th. We received 3 bids. But at the moment, we have this cost is a solid estimate, but we don't have the bid recommendation we made to the FAA hasn't been approved. So we keep this in an estimated amount depending upon what they'll be able to provide us. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions
Is
about
this-
this request.
Is this for Oxnard only, like the one taxiway?
So I have, do you have a slide? Next, please. I'm going to, if we could go to the, yes. So taxiway Foxtrot is the full length parallel taxiway that is essentially as long as the runway.
And
Thank you.
would from the if approved, essentially just cover that the entire project? I believe it would, right?
No, so it would cover, if they're able to come up with full funding, it would be at 90%. And then we would be requesting a matching grant from Caltrans, which is typically 5% of the federal dollars. However, because Caltrans actually caps matching grants to 150,000, the airport would be picking up the difference. And then, so
Okay, that makes sense. Just
and
clarifying.
the board, I'm sorry, the commission letter also shows the airport share with Caltrans cap in place.
So Aaron, on the dollar amount, to kind of go back to
Sure.
this. So I believe it was April of 2021, where it was first brought forth to the commission to redo runway connectors and taxiway at Oxnard Airport, and the number was $24 million. And then we went out to bid and we only got the runways. And that came in, I think, at 12, 13, 14. But I think the notes in the file, this was July 2021, said that was within what we thought it would be. That we thought it'd be half for the runway, and that's in fact what it was. Then we did the connectors, which was going to be 4 million, but it came in at 8 million. Is that right? Am I remembering that right?
Yes, I don't have the breakdown, but certainly it was more than anticipated. I mean, more than estimated.
Yeah. So that came in at 8, and now we have 19. So in barely little over 2 years, this $24 million project has ballooned to $41 million. That just, something doesn't feel right to me in that.
Sure, I'm happy to talk about this
Yeah.
because, certainly our goal is always to pursue improving our infrastructure at the best cost. And that's actually why you saw the 3 projects packaged together in one, is because we were trying to capitalize on the efficiencies of being able to do the project at one time. And typically these would, because of the size of the projects, these would be 3 separate projects that we would need to seek 3 separate grants for and pursue as full project with the expenses involved. At the time that we did bid this, and when we were in design, we worked closely with the FAA and have conversations about funding. And it was, at the time, the FAA had thought that there may be funding to be able to do it at one time and capitalize on the efficiencies. But there's always a risk with that. And I think we've talked about some of those risks along the way, because you don't know, and the FAA never guarantees funding until they actually give you the grant offer. And so it's just something that is part of the formulation. So now we really have lost the efficiencies, in particular with having to do each project on its own, but also with schedule. Originally the project was going to be scheduled and all the work was going to be done with a full closure within a certain time period. And now we've had to triple that. That time period is needed for almost all phases, and the efficiencies of having a closed airport and doing it all at once no longer exists. Additionally, because we had to phase the projects, you have, when you do the runway, you end up having to do transitions. It included transitions into the connector taxiways that in the taxiway connector project, we dig up efficiencies of costs. But all of this is dependent upon the funding available.
Mhm.
And since the funding wasn't there, then we did have to break this out. We had hoped at each phase of this to be able to package any portion of these 3 projects together. When we were in redesign and repackage for the taxiway connectors, we were working with the FAA to see if we could package taxiway Foxtrot, hoping for some of those same same efficiencies, but that wasn't the case.
I would like to add to that is, so Aaron talks about the efficiencies of doing all of those three, the runway, the connectors, and the parallel all together, and us closing the airport for 3+ months. Great efficiencies. The other that she didn't touch on necessarily is what we're seeing in costs since the pandemic started are crazy. Unbelievable. I've never seen in 30+ years I've been doing this. And I did some research and the analysis of materials and staff costs, 30 to 40% in that 3-year period. So us getting supplies and doing those kind of things has also bumped up the project. Then you combine it with the work that we do. Now, mind you, think about this, particularly during COVID time. We asked folks to bid on a project in April, hold all of those prices until we can start the project, which is usually 3 to 6 months down the road or longer. Can you imagine? And you all read the news, what has happened with prices. They're trying to guess what those prices will be 3 to 6 months. And they have to have them because we have liquidated damages. If they can't get something, that's your problem, not ours. So all of that's built in, and which translate into costs that go up on projects we do. I want to add that. Thank you.
Thank you. Very well said.
That, I hear you, but that, we're up 70% in 2 years. Is there anything we can do to, I mean, does it make sense to wait a month and regroup and talk about staging, talk about shutting? I mean, I don't know. It's 2 million out of our pocket and it's 17 million out of the taxpayer's pocket. It's a lot of money.
So, I mean, I can only tell you what the market is bearing out right now, which is that I believe that all the 3 bids that we received were within 10% of the engineer's estimate. So, if you're waiting out for price fluctuations, I mean, there's nothing to do at this point with the bids in hand, except to move forward. And then you make the decision if you don't want to accept a grant within the federal grant cycle, which ends September 30th. And they typically will offer the grant with a deadline to accept it. That's within a few days, sometime in late August, based on the schedule right now. And they're always waiting for authorization. So it has to go through a review. So that's where we're at. And if we get out of line for such a large dollar value project, even if the price came down a couple million, it's still going to be a large ticket item to request a grant. We would need to get in line again. And the only other thing I'd offer up is that although our airports receive grants separately, Oxnard and Camarillo, the FAA still looks at us in our CIP as a system of airports. And so we do have major infrastructure needs here at Camarillo Airport that are coming up in the next few years, including runway reconstruction. And so with that, we would be competing against ourselves and have to choose one airport over another.
I do find this to be like really a high price for this taxiway. I can't believe it's just for that one taxiway. But I also realize 2 things. One is, if it needs to be done, it probably should be done. Second of all, if you don't approve to go for the bond, you lose all that money to be able to do it with. So it's like a rock and a hard spot, but there's not much else you can do. As far as I see, I understand that the prices, everything, yeah, it's skyrocketed. It's very hard to find even a contractor to do anything. I've been there, try to find somebody to do work, and it's really hard these days. Thank you.
Okay, is there any motion?
Before we make the motion, we'll check for any public comment.
Told you to keep reminding me.
I need it too.
She's reminding me too. There's nobody on Zoom who wishes to make a comment on this item.
Thank you. Okay,
And-
now,
Then the motion,
Make a motion to, that they accept the bond.
accept and sign.
Yeah, accept and sign a federal aviation grant for the taxiway at the dock.
and a second,
Yeah, this is Buzz Patterson. I'll second that.
and the roll call, Chair Maggie Bird,
Yes,
Shane Warburton,
Yes.
Buzz Patterson,
Yes.
Gerald Abramson,
Yes,
Steve Tannehill,
I'm going to abstain from voting on this one.
and the motion passes with one abstention from Steve Tannehill. Thank you.
okay, the next subject is receive and file an update on the Oxnard Airport taxiway connectors, A through Alpha reconstruction project.
Yes, so now we're going to show you just a snapshot of those dollars at work
Mhm.
currently right here for the Oxnard Taxway Connector Project. If you could go to the next slide. So we still are under construction. And what I'm going to do is just run through a few slides to remind folks about the scope of the project, where we're at. Couple highlights of information to sort of keep in mind, and then also a revised project completion date. So if you can move to the next slide. So I love progress, and we have 5 taxiway connectors. Did we skip a slide? Okay. Believe that I had an overview that just showed the 5 taxiway connectors highlighted. So we have 5 taxiway connectors at Oxnard Airport, Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, Delta, and Echo. We have completed the reconstruction of taxiway Alpha and taxiway Echo, and currently, next slide, please, are working on Bravo, Charlie, and Delta. And this work also includes the relocation of that FAA power line that was discovered in the storm drain during the runway project. So we are working closely with the FAA and added that to this aspect of the project in order to get it out of the storm drain, which didn't seem like the best option. Next slide, please. And, something I wanted to bring up is that we all are used to our Alpha through Echo naming designations, but as we're approaching completion of this project, they are going to be renamed in order to meet FAA standards, which is required because we reconstruct the taxiway connectors. And what that means is that Alpha through Echo are going to be renamed from their current designations to Alpha 1 through 5. And the parallel taxiway connector Foxtrot is going to become Alpha, taxiway Alpha, parallel taxiway Alpha. So love it or hate it, that's where we're headed. And we will also be, we're getting ready to put out a construction completion update notice to pilots, to our tenants. And we also were throwing in there the reminder of the designation change to the naming of the taxiways. We're also working with our FAA inspector to make sure that the timing for all this and the supplemental charts get updated in a timely manner. Next slide. Oh, I'm sorry. The other item I wanted to bring up here is that, through this project, Mr. Tannehill, you had mentioned PFAS. That is an issue that is becoming more relevant to our construction projects and working with the water board. And with no determinations on what the water board is going to require, we, working with the water board, ended up making a change to the project, which was that instead of hauling off the excess soil, that we are stockpiling it to be able to test it and differentiate whether there's a PFAS issue or not. Currently, we have some locations where we did our annual testing of that firefighting foam that we were required to use by the FAA at several locations across the airport. And those locations, and so what we did with are adjacent to some of the taxiways. So we expect that some of the material when we do the testing will show some non-detect levels. And we expect that there may be some PFAS detection as well. Some of the investigations that we've been doing in concert with the water board has shown that we do have some very low concentrations of PFAS detected. Right now, although this keeps on being a changing landscape and that's hard, is that it doesn't rise above the thresholds of concern for construction worker safety, but we are taking extra precautions anyway. And as part of this project, we needed to stockpile the material. Originally, the project was designed to have approximately 6,000 cubic yards of excess soil removed from the project. And then we issued a change to stockpile that material. But we have also been working with our engineer and understanding some of the noise because we concerns from the community as well, because we do all our work at night. Some of the trucking, we've been able to redesign. We weren't able to do it for Alpha and Taxiway Echo, but for Bravo, Charlie, and Delta, we're able to redesign the cross section so that we use more material in place. And we're reducing the amount of excess soil that we'll end up producing. And our estimate right now is by about 43%. So we're pretty excited about that so that we can limit our future costs and also be reactive and flexible with addressing community concerns.
I don't know if you're aware of it, but the word out on the uninformed street is that those piles are contaminated soil that's been removed from the Oxnard Airport, and it's sitting there contaminating everything.
Well, I mean, I understand concern. I mean, PFAS is really a hot topic, and there's not a lot of information out there, except to know that these chemicals have the potential to cause harm. And so, the water board and the federal government as well, the EPA, are all working to investigate and define, is there any acceptable level? And I mean, they don't want it to be in your drinking water, and that's what the water board is most concerned with. But as far as, so I understand, and I think we understand. However, we have worked really closely with the water board that and they are satisfied that the precautions we've taken will not contaminate the ground it's sitting on, because we have liners, it's covered, we have regular inspections, and that information, we have shared. I think there's been a newspaper article about it, and then we also we had our own messaging in a release.
Well, what I read was that it was contaminated soil that's being taken from the airport, insinuating that it had to go, be piled here, what it didn't replace it with. Like I said, the uninformed street.
Sure.
Yep. But in case I come across it, I wouldn't know how to answer it. So I think that's very good. The water board is with it.
Yes, we're working hand in hand. We have an approved work plan,
That's
and we're following that plan. Next slide. It's really short.
okay.
So we have a revised completion date of August 9th. Originally, we had projected out that we would be complete, I believe, July 21st of this year, which is coming up. We did have a few items that weren't originally calculated into the day count. One of those is on the contractor. They took a little longer in the reconstruction of taxway Alpha than given, and then they were late. But then otherwise, we also had some FA moratoriums where we had to cease any construction because we couldn't turn on and off the nav aids. And so we worked with the contractor, and those days don't count towards their day count. And then we also have had a few weather days where, the fog is a killer, especially with striping and some of the other requirements. So with that, we believe that we're going to be complete August 9th, and we are about to send out a flyer to pilots and tenants, letting everyone know about the new date. And with that, good, I'm happy to answer any additional questions.
Thank you. Very good. Can't wait to hear when it's finished.
Me too.
Yeah. I mean, there's an amazing army of trucks and vehicles out there now. When I look at that, I think, my God, aren't they doing anything else anywhere? We've got so much equipment here. So, okay, do we need a motion here?
We'll check for any public comment first.
Nobody has indicated they wish to speak on this item.
I'll make a motion to receive and file Aaron's report on the Oxnard Airport Taxiway Connector Project.
I'll second that motion.
I was getting stereo.
And the roll call, Maggie Burt, Chair Maggie Burt,
Yes.
Shane Warburn,
Yes.
Buzz Patterson,
Yes.
Gerald Abramson,
Yes.
Steve Tannehill.
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously, 5-0.
Okay, next subject. Update on realignment of the Aviation Advisory Commission. And whoops, did I skip something? Oh,
Sorry that my alphabet was wrong.
I forgot about noise. Oh my God, where's? Uh-huh.
This is the last you're going to hear from me unless you have additional questions.
Please go for it.
All right, so very similar to the ALP update for Camarillo Airport. We just wanted to give a similar, and the format's going to look almost identical to the ALP update, just on the outreach for the noise studies to date. Again, super important we get the message out, and we're using this as a platform to try to make sure that the public has that opportunity for additional comment or to make sure they know what's going on, that we're continuing to work on these studies. If we could go to the next slide, please. So this is a combined effort where, because the studies at this point have been working in tandem on a similar schedule, we've been able to do advertising and some of our messaging. It's been joint. As the projects continue forward, if there's each study may end up going at its own pace, and then we'll kind of separate out our updates, but at this point it's not necessarily needed, but they are distinct studies. But between the two studies and our outreach efforts so far, we've done the same publications. We've had 17 separate advertised dates. We're hitting social media, our websites. We're doing those e-blasts. Here on the noise studies, we've actually done 7 supplemental messaging. And usually this is just to provide clarification, or if we're hearing buzz that there's a lot of confusion about an issue, we may put out more information to try to get that information out and get those answers to people. The e-blasts also reach a few more members because the noise studies are countywide in terms of community. We also are I lost my train of thought. I apologize. We're hitting as much as we can. And we also are making sure that we include the city of Oxnard PIO as well. We are getting messages out to PAC members and as well as those community interest groups and tenants. We have our public meetings and we're doing those same direct communications of citizens concerned about either airport, noise at either airport where they have additional questions or concerns that they want to address. And we're also connecting with our county and city leadership to make sure that we just have open communication about concerns, about progress. Are they hearing anything different? Do we need to expand communication somewhere? So we're just trying to keep those channels open. Some of what to look forward to coming up is that the FAA forecast for both Camarillo and Oxnard airports were submitted since that last meeting in May, and we actually have received approval for both. So we are now taking those forecasts to be able to continue forward on the next chapter development. And we're estimating that the next meeting date will be late September, maybe early October. We're actually looking to solidify those dates and get that messaging out as soon as we can. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions or receive comments.
Nothing, everybody's silent. Okay. Then I'll entertain a motion to receive and file.
We'll take any public comments first.
I got it.
We do have one hand raised, Chair. Would you like to?
Oh, good. Thank you. Go ahead.
This is a caller. Last four digits is 0978. Would you please announce yourself and your name? And then you'll have 3 minutes. Is the speaker able to unmute and announce yourself? I'm not sure how to reach the person. Oh, maybe. Caller with 978, the last 3 digits. You have 3 minutes. Go ahead.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yep, we got you now. Go ahead.
Okay, yes, this is Joe Gosland, and I am a resident of Oxnard Shores. I actually wanted to make a comment or ask if somebody can shed some light on the fact that when the noise sensors were put out, it was right in the middle of May gray / June gloom, whatever you want to call it. And the number of flights was virtually non-existent, in my opinion. And I'm wondering what impact that's going to have on the overall noise study, and if there are any plans to possibly redo some of these noise monitors as the weather seems to be clearing up. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good question to raise. Do we have anybody who can answer it? Okay. Well, thank you for that input, and we'll all think about it. So, okay, we still not need to receive and file on it. On the last presentation. Anybody?
I will make a motion to receive and file the update on the Part 150 noise studies.
Thank you. I hear a second.
I'll second that one.
And roll call, Chair Maggie Burke,
Yes.
Shane Warburton,
Yes.
Buzz Patterson,
Yes.
Gerald Abramson,
Yes.
and Steve Tannehill.
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously 5-0.
Thank you. Okay. Go ahead.
All right, Chair and commission members. Next item is the Aviation Advisory Commission meeting day and time issue. Our recommendation, an effort to provide the broadest public outreach and public access for the Department of Airports. Department of Airports is recommending that the Aviation Advisory Commission meeting consider and vote on one of three options for holding their monthly meetings. And there you see the three options there. By way of background, this commission about 6 months ago decided to adjust your meeting date and times. It was the first Monday of the month at I think it was 7 o'clock at night, and to kind of broaden and partner and spread out the options for community, decided to move to a lunchtime meeting for a 6-month trial period. So we're kind of coming at the end of the 6th month. It will be August, so I figured we should meet and discuss that this month. So we provided three options again. That is, stay the way it is, the same day of the authority, which is the second Thursday of the month, having it at lunchtime. That's kind of the first option. The second is to leave it at lunchtime, but move it to Tuesday or Wednesday, the same week as the authority, as their Thursday meeting. And the last is to move it to a nighttime meeting, 6:30 or so. And again, still having it Tuesday, Wednesday of the same week. And the reason for, if you thought about it, it was originally the first Monday of the month, and then the second Thursday was the airport authorities. So there could be a span of almost 12 days as we're trying to move things through the process. And we're trying to finish up something over here, and in between those two meetings, something else get finished. But we got to take a day, we lose a month. So if we can compress them to having the same within 2 or 3 days, it helps getting agendas out and getting those things together as opposed to so far out. So that's the reason. The one thing I'd really ask is that we have them Tuesday, Wednesday, obviously not Thursday, but Tuesday or Wednesday, the same week of the authority. Whether daytime or evening works best, I kind of leave that to you folks. But that's the reason for those three options. We still believe having a daytime, and folks can go to the authority, which is it set at nighttime, broadens the opportunity for public input and community outreach. But again, I'll leave it to you. That's our spiel.
Okay. Anybody want to comment on that or question?
Well, we did evenings, I guess, forever, and it was just a recent experiment. And I just think practically it just doesn't work for the public. I mean, here we are, 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Even if somebody was working and wanted to take their lunch break to watch us, they'd be back at work. So we got a lot more public participation before we moved to days. And since we moved to days, we've gotten almost none. So I think we should go back to the evenings. I think we tried it, and I think the evidence is we get a lot more public participation if we hold it at night.
I looked this whole thing up on the web when it was suggested. And what I found was it didn't really talk much about public meetings. It talked about corporations and private corporations. And they always said it was better to have them in the morning. But that was corporations that people were going to work anyway. And I kind of agree. I thought I had the agreement in my mind that, noontime for most people isn't a time that they can actually get away for a long enough time to go to a public meeting or be speaking at a public meeting. Although I like the time personally, it worked for me. Yeah, I don't think it works as well for the public. Thank you.
Yeah, to that point, at least supervisor's office, considering how we have 4 meetings. Am I coming through okay? Kind of
Yes.
breaking up. Oh, okay. All of those meet in the evenings, either 6 or 7 p.m. And it's for that exact reason. It's because it encourages the public discourse because people have jobs that they're going to, and kind of lunch break doesn't really work for most people. So like an evening time seems beneficial.
Well, I'm a rookie here, so I'll defer to the old heads, but I think the evening idea is probably a good idea too for public interaction.
I'd like to make a motion that we have the meetings. I don't know if it's Tuesday or Wednesday, it doesn't matter to me, Do we have a preference?
Pick one and
No.
say it and make a motion out of it.
Make a motion.
We would prefer Wednesday close to.
'Cause it's
back to
Wednesday,
back
we'll do
with-
it.
Yeah, okay.
Yes, I'll make a motion that the advisory commission meet further on Wednesdays at 6:30 PM.
Before I get the second, we're just going to check for any public comment.
That'd be the second Wednesday of the month. Would that be appropriate?
Not always,
Not always.
depends when it falls. So we'll work through a calendar and bring that back.
Sounds good.
We'll work on, yes.
Chair, we do have one person wishes to speak on this item.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Okay, I think we're connected. Can you hear me?
Stand by just one moment. I'm bringing up video here. Okay,
All right,
wait a
great.
minute. I'll give 3 minutes. Go ahead.
All right, good. Yeah, the experiment, I think, was a total failure. I mean, and I spoke early on last year, almost a little over a year ago, when this was first proposed by Kelly Long, that we take a look at combining the meetings on the same day. And my argument then is my argument now, and I think it's been proven out. I've been involved with community elected positions for about 30 years, and I have never seen a successful community meeting in the morning or at noon. I understand the outreach situation. You want to reach as many people as you can, but the bulk of the people cannot deal with that kind of a schedule. Your own commission can't get some of the members there because it's during the day. I mean, you have a very busy guy, Matt Johnston, very few meetings he's attended. Steve Weiss, very few meetings has he attended. And this is, and I'm sure the list goes on. They have lives, they have jobs. This is not the only thing. And so, you have to take that into consideration. As far as Director Freitas made a valid point earlier when he spoke in another section about this, about the meeting schedule. That doesn't matter who goes first, whether it's the commission or the authority. They both report to the Board of Supervisors. But it does matter if you have items that are going to move from one to the other because they both have interest. And if the commission is looking at things to talk to the Oxnard Authority about, and they are truly enrolling the public in the ways that we spoke about earlier, and you want to avoid any, God forbid, more violations of the Brown Act, you're just setting yourself up for failure if you don't give them 72 hours for posting. These are the rules that we have to operate on. I don't know why it has to be 48 hours. Why can't we embrace the minimum posting requirement if for some reason something has to be changed from your meeting to the authority meeting? At least you have 3 days in there for a special meeting if you need it, if there's something that needs to get moved forward and your work as a commission is not done. So it's a solvable problem, but we need to get back on some kind of a schedule where your guys can attend and where a broader section of the public can attend, and we eliminate this Brown Act stuff, even today. I mean, come on, guys, we can do better than this. So I would suggest a minimum 72 hours for posting requirements. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chair, we do not have anybody else that wishes to speak on this topic.
We had Gerald Abramson motion the item. Do we have a second?
I can't do it. So go ahead.
Oh, okay, so I'll make a motion that, well, you made the motion already, yeah, so I'll second Jerry's motion.
Okay, roll call, please.
Chair Maggie Bird,
Abstain.
Shane Warburton,
Yes.
Buzz Patterson,
Yes.
Gerald Abramson,
Yes.
Steve Tannehill.
Yes.
The motion passes with one abstention from Maggie Bird.
Okay. Oh, good. Director's report.
We have one more item. 6J.
Jay, we moved that up to the front.
No, this is the fly friendly item, 6J.
Oh. Okay, so sorry. I think I printed that. Okay. I'm
So good
sorry.
afternoon, all. I'm Jeanette Haragi. I'm the Communications and Engagement Manager for the reports. Can you hear me okay? All right. First slide, please. Here to give an update on the Fly Friendly VC program. So I'm going to make this fairly quick. So we had our annual Fly Friendly VC fly-in event on June 20th, 2023 at Oxnard Airport. We welcomed nearly 30 pilots. So this is an image from the event. We welcomed nearly 30 pilots, flight instructors, and flight schools to discuss the program status and expectations moving forward. The event welcomed speakers that included Lee Westfall, who's the manager of the Oxnard Traffic Control Tower. And then in this photo, you see speakers Barb Filkins and John George, both locally based pilots and advocates for Fly Friendly VC. And then Keith and I also presented and discussed current successes of the program and emphasized the need for continued progress and commitment from all pilots who utilize Oxnard and Camarillo airports. All participants were encouraged to take what they learned from the event back to their pilots and peers and pilots who were. It was absolutely good dialogue. Purpose was to keep Fly Friendly VC at the forefront of everyone's mind in a collective effort to be the best possible neighbors that we can be. Again, the discussion emphasized the value and importance of the continued partnership between pilots, community, and the airports. And then the event concluded with a lunch provided by the Department of Airports, and again, continued, good dialogue back and forth, and just having that face-to-face contact, which is really critical as we continue to bridge this gap of communication with pilots and the community in general. Next slide, please. So a huge focus of the event was on this map, and this is flight tracks that were, this map was made possible by Barb Filkins and Eric Nelson. Huge investment in time and in money on Barb's part to make this possible as a way to show all pilots what ideal fly-friendly VC flight tracks look like. Barb and Eric also worked on a video showcasing what the tracks look like from the sky with a camera that was mounted on Barb's plane. So both the map and the video were displayed at the event and are available on our website. As you know, Fly Friendly VC was launched in September 2022 as a way to address noise-related concerns from neighbors living nearby Oxnard airports. The push continues to focus heavily on both local pilots, CFIs, and regional flight schools, all of which have been responsive to the program. We've seen improvements, but there's more work to be done. With the support of pilots like Barb and John and Eric and many others, and with the compatibility study, we're on a continued path of progress. And again, a huge element of this is on just that face-to-face interaction. We'll have these events, these fly-in events annually. We continue to meet with community members and discuss concerns over the phone, in person. And so that nurturing of those relationships is just.
No, that's very descriptive. Thank you for the information.
I'll just say again, thank you. Thank Barb Filkins for her good, hard work. I appreciate everybody's efforts to make this thing be successful for everybody. So thank you.
Thank you.
We'll check for any public comments.
Okay, we want.
Nobody's indicated, sorry,
Go ahead.
nobody online has indicated they wish to speak on this topic. Oh, somebody just popped in.
Okay.
Pardon me. It looks like the caller that came in before, Mr. Goslin, I believe.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, you have 3 minutes. Go ahead.
Okay, yeah, I did want to make a few comments. And first of all, I'd like to, commend Jeanette and Keith on some of the work they've done with the tower, because it has been readily apparent that there is a lot more right traffic happening. But there's not enough right traffic before the canal, which is really the basis of there. Number one is turn left or right before the canal. And if you can't, then go straight out and hopefully you can turn right. We've seen an improvement. However, we still have a number of flight schools, and I'm going to call them out because it's the same people over and over and over. CAU and Channel Islands are atrocious at the Fly Friendly program. Just this morning, Channel Islands decided it would be a great idea to buzz directly straight through the community, not just over it from the ocean, but right from 5th Street, right down the middle, 8 times this morning. And it seems to be the same flight schools all the time. And I recognize, there are certain times where they can't go this way, that way, but they don't have to cut across 5th Street, right smack down Oxnard Shores neighborhood. It's ridiculous. And there's a lot of Oxnard pilots, local pilots. Jeanette probably has all of their names since we email her all the time with them. But there's still a lot of work to be done on this flight friendly program, because we have local flight schools that are not following this in any way, shape, or form. And the last thing I'd like to say is it's not just that we're complaining about noise. This is a safety issue. There have been so many small aircraft crashes in the last 60 days. I think it's up to 5 or 7. And in one of the articles, they actually state, and I'm quoting them, that flying in a private aircraft is said to be 19 times more dangerous than driving in a car, and private aviation crashes are 200 times more likely to be fatal than commercial airline crashes. So really, this is a safety issue. And if we could stop them from flying directly down through the neighborhood, I understand if they go out over and they have to turn left a half mile or more out, they've got to come back across. But that's not coming directly through the middle of the neighborhood, 6 or 7 times. And I just think if we're in the accountability phase, it's more than time to hold CAU, Channel Islands, and there's many others for their violations, because if there's no accountability, then there's nothing to stop them. So thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. I'd like to add one thing in my own personal knowledge, that there is a housing project that's being started right at the just after the departure in 25. And it looks like a pretty large area. I haven't been able to find out much about it, but I've been watching it. It looks like they're starting now. So we just need to keep our eye on that, I guess.
Yeah, so there's at least 2 that I know. There's one kind of right at Harbor and Woolley that's kind of go behind those new townhomes, and then another one further up. And it's been said that in a study that was done in 98, that relative to that development, that planes would fly a pattern to keep them northeast of that development. So I don't know, that's what I was told. I haven't seen it myself, but maybe should that come online, we as a body can participate to avoid the kind of problems we've been having with that new neighborhood, should it come online.
I will add that all of my flight experience comes from flying at Camarillo Airport, and I learned to fly from my private pilot's license all the way to my commercial multinational through Channel Islands Aviation. And I can say that school does an excellent job at promoting the Fly BC program and training their pilots to fly by those standards. With that in mind, it is also a flight school. So these are people with no flight experience coming in and learning how to do it. And the traffic pattern environment is a very low speed, but high stress environment, especially for somebody who really doesn't know what they're doing yet. So in regards to the efforts of safety, if they accidentally cross over a housing development, by the airport, if they're doing it for their own safety so that they don't crash in a stall, which is more bound to happen in the pattern environment, than anywhere else, then that's in the benefit of everybody. But in regards to like promoting the Fly VC program, the schools and the instructors with there is always more to be done, but in terms of safety, that is paramount.
So I can say that we have continued communication with Channel Islands, with CAU, and with all, regional flight schools, area flight schools, locally based pilots. If we notice or are made aware of certain activity, we have that discussion, that dialogue. As far as new housing developments go, Fly Friendly VC isn't, nothing's set in stone. We're always going to look to explore ways to make sure that, community and pilot safety is prioritized, and that we can, always pivot when needed to make sure that Fly Friendly continues to be a success, and that we're exploring always to make improvements.
I do remember several years ago when they were just doing the construction at the new housing track here at Camarillo, just north of the freeway. And there was a lot of concern about safety, about noise, about schools and everything. So I don't know, it's working now. Whatever they did is fine. I think they just changed the pattern a little bit further to the north. That's the only thing I remember about it. It was a couple years ago, but it's working. People are using that one for a downwind now.
So again, we're staying at the forefront of everyone's mind, and that's sooner than later, it's going to become the norm versus what was the norm pre-Fly Friendly VC.
Right.
Thank you.
I guess I'll make a motion to receive and file the report.
I guess so. Thank you.
Thank you.
I will second that.
And
Okay, roll call, please.
Well, I think we have one more public comment.
Mr. Benedetto has indicated he'd like to speak on this topic.
Go on here. Okay. I promise this is my last comment. I'm not here to beat you guys up today, but I want to give you guys a little clarity on something you were talking about the developments and all of that. At the end of the North Shore development, which is at 5th and Harbor on the north side, which has been on and off again, is a completely entitled development. One of the builders decided that they were going to sell the entitlements after they had done some work. And the other guys that have bought it are a very large Southern California developer, and they're just waiting for the right time. And they've been doing a few things. In the 1998 study, the then airport director pleaded with the city to not develop that. It was parkland, and the city changed it to high density residential. And in the EIR, the environmental impact report for the North Shore development, there is a letter from the city to the report that says all the aircraft will turn right or left prior to the canal and will not overfly that parcel. The airport director at the time said, this is the most critical parcel we have for exiting aircraft. And so that's the problem we're having. And we're butt up against 3 or 4 of those zoning changes when we go into the next phase of the 150 study, where there are things that have already been entitled that should not have been entitled where they are for safe operation, like Portofino that I mentioned earlier. But the development that Commissioner Tannehill is talking about is a proposed development by the Avalon Corporation that is building single family and townhomes south of Woolley, south of 5th, wrapped around the current Dunes neighborhood. Their EIR was not publicly noticed. It was a workshop that the community development people put out, and they did no noise study. And the current exit pattern that we're seeing flying out over the North Shore development to be and turning south prior to they even get to the water. And the return path flies directly over that development. It's a safety issue. It's a noise issue. To my knowledge, it has not been entitled yet. We wrote a letter, the Oxnard Shores Neighborhood Council, and attached it to the EIR because they'd already done their study and nobody knew about it. And the Portofino project is basically the same thing. The new Teal Club project is going to rear its head. So this next phase of the 150 study really needs some attention paid to it by the advisory and by the authority to go along with the safety and noise recommendations that the County Airport Land Use Committee will come up with. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. We had a motion.
I had Steve
Oh.
Tannehill with that motion and Shane with the second.
Right.
Roll
Roll
call,
call.
Chair Maggie Bird,
Yes.
Shane Warburton,
Yes.
Buzz Patterson,
Yes.
Gerald Abramson,
Yes.
and Steve Tannehill.
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously 5-0.
Thank you. Now the director's report.
All right, now director's report. Just a few items. Wanted to point out, we did talk about it at the May meeting, but we do allow another opportunity for public comment. Those that can't make it here, don't want to participate via Zoom, that link, you can email in your comments at 12 noon the day before the meeting, and we will send those comments on to committee members and then include them in the packet. Department of Airports has for the first time set up a credit card app so tenants can pay online portal that just started last few months and is very appreciated by the tenants. Another opportunity way for them to pay, making it easier for them, actually easier for us, the Department of Airports. Coming up, Channel Islands Neighborhood Council, July 27th meeting. Dave Navy from our office, Deputy Director, will be attending that. Talk about the Oxnard construction project and any other airport related items that come up. I think we have a slide, Dave, for the annual animal Clear the Shelter event with Animal Services Department. There we go. We are supporting that, and that's coming up on August 26th. It's the weekend after the air show, as a matter of fact. Some good news, our staff worked with the Boys and Girls Club at a career event exploration. We have a July 17th coming up with a tour coming in the near future. It is there. Oxnard. Do a tour of the airport. Talk about what's going on, career opportunities, things like that. We had our first artesian market in the parking lot at Oxnard Airport on July 1st. I think it was 22 vendors and several food trucks, and the next one is coming on August 5th. Very positive on the first one, hoping the same for the August 5th event. Our very own Barb Filkins has submitted to the National Association of Flight Instructors a topic idea, and her topic was accepted. It is an abstract in improving air traffic patterns and how those will help communities with noise. So kind of a tie. She'll be working with the airport department, Jet, and myself, on that topic. Congratulations to her. I think we have a picture of the first two aircraft that went in the first hangar at Cloud 9. You can barely see them in a blurred vision, but they're actually back there on left and right side of the 25,000 square foot hangar.
Do you know what kind of plane, jets those are?
Dave, I don't know if you saw them. I think it was citation, but I'm not sure.
I think they are Praetors, temporary Praetors. So it's a mid-sized jet.
Last couple items, we were honored to have Congresswoman Julia Brownlee. She did a staff retreat in the county, and one of her stops was the airport and a ride with the sheriff on one of their fancy helicopters. Did a tour out And she's always been very supportive of the Department of Airports and the airport system, both airports. Appreciate that. And then the last item, Ojai Valley School doing a summer camp this Friday. Again, Oxnard Airport, a tour of the air traffic control tower, our ARF trucks, and then over to Aspen helicopters. So some good community things happening as well. And that's all I have, unless there's any questions of me.
I have a question, Director Freitas. When you talk about career and jobs, and we hear a lot about air traffic controllers and the need for new air traffic controllers, and it strikes me that could be a really wonderful career path for certain young people. Do we do anything with that to make that available? And
So that, I mean, that's exactly what I just talked about is we bring in the air traffic control folks that are there. Lee, if you haven't met Lee in the tower, very dynamic
Right.
person who's been doing that since the 70s, good with kids. But it's really all the STEM. I mean, obviously, there's airport management and there's pilots and mechanics, air traffic controllers, lots of options. That's really getting kids just interested in all the STEM of science and technology, all of those things. As we expand the new development and new technology, new businesses at the airport, we'll be able to bring those hopefully into kind of these tour programs. We're working to bring the schools and the teachers in so they can kind of include not only just tours, but maybe part of the curriculum as well. So I mean, those are broader things that are on the net list to try to bring over the next several years.
I have a question. Does Cardinal and Avex, I thought had bought Cardinal, and Channel Islands bought by somebody else, but I know it's a self-service now, Channel Islands.
That's an item where AVEX was the operator of the fuel system and they've subcontracted out with Channel Islands to run that for them.
I guess.
Well, good report. Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Any questions or comments about the reports? There's a lot of them. Okay. And how about the correspondence? Any questions or comments? Okay, how about let's adjourn? Do we have to vote to adjourn?
oh, okay. I'll make a motion that we adjourn our meeting.
I second that emotion.
And we'll get a roll call.
Yes.
Chair Maggie Burke,
Yes.
Shane Warburton,
Yes.
Buzz Patterson,
Yes.
Gerald Abramson,
Yeah.
Steve Tannehill,
Yes.